Man over there.
Call to order. Hastings-on-Hudson Board of Ed meeting, May 21st, 2019. So we've got some celebrating today, so that's always a good thing. And we have hopefully a fairly light agenda today to go through. I will kick it off by passing it over to Dr. Wilson for some announcements.
Just a few, because I know there's a lot to do and time to get downstairs for the vote. In any case, I just have to share with everyone that there were a lot of I think just about the whole board was upstairs at the meeting on vaping, sponsored by the middle school, and it was really, really well done. It's a problem that we're all learning more about, but I think it's clear that the middle school is right on top of it, and that it is something that the district will have to deal with and to improve as we learn more about it going along. That said, the new superintendent was down. She's not here yet. I'm here, but she will be here shortly, and she knows a lot on the subject. But it was nice that she made the effort to come down for that special meeting. I would also like to add that we're coming in close on the selection with respect to the new assistant superintendent. A couple of things to iron out there, but hopefully we'll be able to talk to you more about that. I'd also like to say that well, actually, I think I'm going to cut it off right at that point, because I'll save something else for later on. I would say that we have a wonderful group of new teachers here tonight, and really, I must say that the people that we've been hiring are very impressive, and we, in fact, have their principals are here as well who want to introduce them before they're appointed. So I know we're going to get to that, I believe, next up very soon. Welcome.
Great. And just a couple of quick things coming up. Tomorrow it's grade 5 and 6 spring concert, and the Playwrights Festival is also tomorrow in the Lloyd Library, 7 o'clock. And a few other things that you've probably seen in email, so I won't go through all of those, but those are some highlights. There's also, it's coming up on the 29th, the Multicultural Book Fair and the Multicultural Festival on Saturday, June 1st. Farragut Middle School gym.
Correct me if I'm wrong, and maybe you would know. This is the first year of the festival being tacked on. In the past, it's always been the book fair in the library, and now this is taking it a step. Is that the way you understand it?
Yeah,
and
just to put it in context, even the book fair itself, the multicultural book fair itself, is rather new. I think
This
we've
is
had
year
it for
3.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it's really exciting, and
So
a
that's
thank you
good.
to Mary Louise Miller, who's really heading up the festival, and to our Race Matters Committee, who've been doing
Yeah.
this,
Yeah, so it's a nice
year
thing.
after
It
year.
continues to grow.
Doug, before we move on, I do just want to give a shout out that we really had a wonderful ceremony here. I believe it was last Thursday for our HASP students. We had a graduation, and each student spoke, and it was, as everybody has said year after year, it's extremely moving. And I really just want to thank our entire school. I'll thank the board. I'll thank our administrators. I'll thank our teachers and our staff for having this program and building this program. I would thank Greg Smith, but I know there are many others involved as well, and Lou, so I won't start naming, but it to me is a life-saving program, and I'm so proud of our district that we do this. And when you hear these kids' stories, boy, you can't walk out without thinking you're just so proud of these students and so proud of our district. So.
Thank you, Lisa. Let's move on to recognition of our new hires. And with that, I will pass it over to Amy and John.
Okay, good evening, everyone. I am very, very pleased to speak on behalf of our new hires tonight. We embarked on a very rigorous process. We had 600 resumes that we looked through for our general education positions. We had a very large committee that participated on our interviews. We started off with a screening round. We then brought our candidates to a panel round where we had at least one representative from every grade level and special education. and then we moved on to a demonstration lesson round and a writing sample, all of which contributed to the important pieces that then led our recommendations to Dr. Wilson. So without further ado, I'd like to share a little bit about each of our candidates with you. Our first candidate that I'd like to speak about is Jamie Bragg. Jamie Bragg is being hired as a first grade classroom teacher. She has been a second grade classroom teacher in the Rhinex schools for the past year and a little bit more. Before that, she served in both first grade and reading teacher leave replacements, so she's been in the same school. Ms. Bragg holds a Bachelor of Science in Childhood Education from the State University of New York at Oneonta, and is currently pursuing a Master of Science in Literacy Education at Long Island University. And she's expected to graduate next spring. She's certified in childhood education 1 through 6. I'd like to share just for a moment what some of her references said about Jamie. They described her as enthusiastic, flexible, a team player, positive, kind, committed, reflective, and just plain awesome. So without further ado, I would like to welcome Jamie Bragg, and I would like to recommend her for appointment from our Board of Education. Lauren has been opportunities for all students. She loves to hold family engagement events, so for all of you that are Hillside parents, that's extremely exciting for us. And finally, one of her references shared, it's a huge loss for our school, but you've gained a wonderful teacher. So I'd like to welcome Lauren to our team. And finally, I would like to speak on behalf of Ms. Lisa Levine, whose husband Doug is here to support her. Ms. Levine has been a first grade classroom teacher in the New York City Department of Education for the past 2 years and was recently named a model teacher by the New York City Department of Education. Previously, she was tenured by the New York City Department of Education as a second grade teacher. Ms. Levine has also served as a kindergarten teacher and academic intervention teacher, and she's been teaching for 11 years. Ms. Levine holds a Bachelor of Arts in Musical Theater from American University in Washington, D.C., a Master of Science in Elementary Education from Hunter College in New York City, and a Master of Literacy from Touro College in New York City. She is certified in both childhood education 1 through 6 and literacy, grades birth through 6. Her references shared that Lisa is dedicated. She is a leader amongst peers, having had her classroom a lab site for other teachers. She's always full of fresh ideas. And most importantly, teachers shared that they looked up to her. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Lisa to our team. I believe we have 3 exceptional candidates that we are presenting to you, our Board of Education, for appointment tonight, and I thank you.
So while everyone's here, why don't we take things just a little bit out of order and go to 5A in the agenda, and actually, so we've got 7 appointments there. The first 3, Amy has just gone through, and there are 4 more, so that we can listen to you get introduced and then appoint you right away.
Yeah.
So does anyone have any questions? I know there are 4 others here. Does anyone have any questions they want to ask on the board before we move on to the appointment? No? Okay. So do I have a motion to approve appointments 5A, 1 through 7?
So moved.
And a second? Second. All in favor? Okay, welcome. We don't have any cake today. I apologize.
That's tenure, that's tenure.
That's
That's
tenure.
a new hire.
Hang around for 4 years, do a great job, you'll get cake. You got, you have some, okay, I wasn't aware, so please, Lou.
It's going to be me.
Oh, it's Jeanette, okay, please.
I'll make it brief, I promise. Thank you. I echo exactly what Amy had said with regards to our selection process. This is a bittersweet appointment for our department because we have a longtime veteran, Ms. Velva Edwards, who will be retiring. So while we're saddened by her retirement in that sense, we're very joyful that she's moving on to another portion of her life that she is so excited about and ecstatic about as well. So, but the additional joy comes that we, after a very rigorous process also, came upon a wonderful candidate, Mr. Joe Grasso, who we'd like to present to the board for a recommendation for appointment as a 1.0 school counselor for Hastings High School. Joe has been a counselor at Stepanak High School for the past 10 years and has worked in that department and has moved that department forward in many arenas, starting off as probably, I want to say, 2 or 3 counselors. That department has grown. He has brought in many programs into that department with regards to Navion, standardized testing, improvement on college, being mentor to many of those appointments in the extra counselors that had come into his department as well. Prior to that, he worked as an SAT, ACT, GRE tutor and had worked in education in that arena. On the outside of the education piece, which is still somewhat connected, Joe has been coaching for many years, and he has recently, last year, began coaching our football team, and our athletic department needed extra coaches, so he not only took on the football role, he's taken on lacrosse. Am I saying that correctly? I'm sorry. Thank you, boys modified lacrosse and winter track. So he's a busy guy.
Great.
He's a busy guy, so.
Awesome.
Exactly. But this just underscores his commitment to youth, to bonding of students, to growing with students from a modified to varsity, to working with kids of all ages. So that came through a lot through his entire interview process, especially when we had him do a lesson with students. They immediately gravitated. There was a warmth that came out that was just immediately where there was just this connection that just came. That's kind of hard to put in words, but the kids felt it, and we felt it as well. So we knew that that was going to be what we needed to have. So Joe graduated Mercy College with a degree in psychology, has a degree in school counseling, certified as a school counselor, and we are ecstatic and happy to welcome a new member to the team, and I'm sure he will make a wonderful addition. So congratulations.
Thank you. Welcome, Joe. Okay, so we've got student report.
I'm going to just say one comment before we switch to student report, or a couple comments from the board, but just for the new hires. I guess number one, welcome to Hastings. It's great, and I think you'll find that and feel that. Number two, I cannot believe how many resumes that you get and that you guys rise to the top. There's, as you said that, there is no job I've held in my 22-year professional career I think that there's been 600 resumes for. So that, you know, that speaks volumes. I think number three, if I see you around, I'll be interested to hear what your reflections are in terms of being here new for 1 year. I think there's probably a slightly, you know, different lens and thoughts than teachers have been here for a while. So if you see me, particularly with, well, both of you actually, I'm in the high school a lot, and I'm in the elementary, my son's still there. If you see me and I don't see you, stop me and share your reflections. I'll be interested to hear it. And then fourth and lastly, so I guess we can look forward to winning lacrosse in 4 years. So no pressure, but that's all I heard, because I know that it's not sort of top of mind for Hastings relative to maybe Dobbs or Yorktown, but you know, all I heard was you're the guy for that, so, all right. Oh, good. Great. No, seriously, though, welcome all of you, and it's...
Guarantee the win. I like that.
It's nice to see the new faces come in, so, and best of luck.
Should we vote on the remainder of the first one?
We did.
We did.
I think we just
We
did.
voted on all of them.
No,
We did 1 through 7.
Oh, okay.
I just wasn't aware you were here, Joe, so I apologize for that. You were voted in before you were announced, so.
I'm sorry, quick technical question. Minutes, are you taking the minutes? Okay.
Maureen's doing it, yeah.
Okay, so let's move on to public comment. Does anyone here have any public comment? Sharon? Okay, so we're going to move on to the athletic department overview. Interesting, one of the questions I have for you is about the football program and how it grew so much, and maybe you've been part of that, Joe, I don't know.
Well, Lou was teasing me. We want to let them go before I get started.
But we should. It is
They could go ahead.
7:50 on a Tuesday night. You are free to hear about the current
You're
state,
welcome to stay. I'm just
the past, the current, and the future of athletics, but you're also more that we don't take any personal offense, so.
The board directs you to go.
That's the subtle message.
They weren't moving. Guys, congratulations.
And Joe, the board releases you once he's done that.
Did everyone get a blue folder?
Yeah.
It looks like everyone has one.
What'd you say, Jess? Jesse, did everybody get a
I
folder?
dropped on your desk before the meeting one of these. If you guys don't mind, I'm going to close this.
You guys are exposed now.
Fly away. Desk over All right, you guys are sticking around. This is great.
They're hardcore. Jesse, will you be raising the hand?
We have
It's
to be
not in my
upstairs before
presentation.
9 to get into the
Sure.
gym.
I left
Okay.
They
what I
lock
think
the
is
gym
a
at
good amount of
9.
time just to really feel.
I mean, I think they push them to open it for us, but they get very,
Yeah, so save it to the
So,
end.
Jessica, we're going to do it 30. 3-0.
Okay.
30.
Presentation. Or the whole thing can,
Make it 20 presentation, and we'll do 10 question and answer.
No problem.
So just use your time.
no problem. All right. So just a little bit of housekeeping. In front of you, you have a blue folder. In the blue folder, I attempted, because I am going to try to get through everything in the 20 minutes I'm allotted, I've given you the slides from my presentation. So please jot down notes, questions, concerns as we go through. That way, in the end, when we have 10 minutes, of course, I probably won't be able to address everything, but at least we have all of your questions, concerns, everything else kind of jotted down. The other thing that you have in front of you is really a supplement to today's presentation. It has 3 main things in it. The first would be really just a basic introduction. The second would be 4 years of participation numbers. I've only been back in this role for less than 2 years, so working my way backwards took quite a bit of work. 4 years is all you got. If you have interest in some of our participation numbers from back when I was the athletic director last time, I have those as well. And then the last piece, which we'll speak a little bit about, is this tiered support that I'd like to kind of present to some of you guys and address any questions you may have. So really, one of the first things that comes to my mind when we talk about athletics is how it's changed, right? I was here in 2008 when I took the position the first time as a teacher, and now I'm back. A little over 10 years later, a lot has changed. At the section level, at the state level, but also, of course, here in Hastings. I put together, let's see, of course, now it's not working, a couple of things that really kind of, I think, are a good representation of the
Here, you want me to-
now. This was working a couple of seconds. All right, well.
You want me to tab
Yeah,
through
can somebody
for you?
just-
And you just
Oh,
tell me
no,
when
it's
to-
something with the computer. Oh, the computer doesn't seem to be working. Sorry, I promised I tested this before. Okay, here we go. So, it's my son there on the right. All right, back 10 years ago, our buzz looked a little bit different, right, from it does now. Okay, our fitness center has come a long way. We've got 3 very sad-looking ellipticals in the back. Last summer, I did really the culmination of a 2-year project of mine, which started before I became the athletic director again, working on renovating our fitness center. I got my best real estate photographers on this one, so it's a little fish-eyed and it looks a lot bigger than it is, but it really is a state-of-the-art facility, something we have never been able to offer before. Another one is, some of you guys may recognize, people grow up, people change, our athletic programs have as well. Right back in high school, Ali Marpet, still a big guy, all right? He's now grown quite a bit. We have a lot of past that I don't think we should forget about, which is part of this presentation. Really, who are we and what do we do? A lot. I could never put it in this presentation, right? We have 67 coaches on staff. We have a number of volunteers that all have the same qualifications as our paid staff. We have a full-time certified athletic trainer. We have training for our security staff and event staff that help us run events. Like today, we had a modified track meet, a number of schools, tons of athletes. We couldn't do everything that we do without all of these support staff members. Chaperones, and we'll hear a little more later about intramurals. When people think about our athletic programs, they think about our interscholastic athletics, but there's also portions of our program that's right here in-house. I'll talk about it a little bit. I think that's where we can do, make some of the biggest and most meaningful changes is within that intramural. Our programs, we have 21 different sports that we offer for 7th through 12th graders, and that makes up 47 different teams. Okay, you're not supposed to be able to see what that is. That is the BOCES schedule when you pull it down off of SportsPack, the website that we use. Those are the games that we schedule, reschedule, sometimes on a rainy day. What you see in front of you represents September and half of October. All right, let me say that again. September and half of October. There's no way I could hope to fit every single sporting event that we offer here for our students. It would take 10 slides. Every single one of those little lines represents officials. It represents transportation. It represents, week-long commitments of the sports, the athletes, the coaches that put in the work to play in those games. You're not meant to be able to read what they are. The idea is what they represent. How much of the culture from 3 o'clock on athletics can be. Okay, we're not going to watch this. I don't have enough time. But the next slide serves the same purpose. What do you guys see when you look at this slide? What is that picture? What do you see?
It's a packed house.
Packed house. What else? Right? Last year, for the first time ever in Hastings history, we offered, at least as I could tell, a sectional final. Something a school our size usually does not do. Okay? The gym, I have never seen it as packed as it was. The closest we could get to an estimate was somewhere north of probably 700-800 people at a time, right? Our bleachers, fully pulled out, packed. Now, what does it mean? It means that one of our athletes got to win a sectional championship on his home court. You're not able to do that in basically any other sport because Hastings took on the challenge to host thousands of spectators, hundreds of athletes, and put on a pretty good show, if I might add myself, right? It was a wonderful experience, but it reaches every little aspect of our community, right? 2 8th graders, we found them in the hallway that morning at the play practice, and we convinced them to sing the national anthem in front of like 800 or 900 people. It was streamed live on one of our local news channels. It was a really wonderful experience. Their parents ended up coming and watching and filming. It was a wonderful experience. Our 7th and 8th grade wrestlers, their job, they volunteered for like 18 hours over 2 days to walk around with, you can see one right there in between the green and yellow mat. He had a long wand. And his job, because it was so loud in the gymnasium, was to run over to the official when there was 10 seconds left and whack him a couple times. Because the official would never be able to hear or see the buzzer. This is a 200 egg sandwiches that was purchased from a local family deli so that we could feed all these people, right? It's connected in so many ways. So we're going to come back to this quite a bit. I'm not going to spend much time here. But when we think about athletics, I want us to think about really this foundation. Okay, we have intramurals, modified sports for our 7th and 8th grade, junior varsity, and varsity. They each represent a slightly different piece of this puzzle. Now, a couple of our core values that I've really tried to build over the last few years with a lot of help, right, would be this idea of character education. I think it was this year, our varsity girls and JV girls volleyball program raised almost $3,000 for breast cancer research. And that's not like a single event. That's a number of events through a full season. But we've also had that type of participation in so many sports. Wrestling did Wounded Warriors, you know, the list goes on and on. I think part of the reason I was put on earth was to kind of make kids feel like all-stars, right? Some of it they do really easily themselves. They're just great at their sport, and they're all the advertising they need, right? Melanie's a wonderful basketball player, picked up and regularly by our local newspapers. And sometimes we as adults have to work really hard, right? Laura is actually here in the back, the Booster Club president. One of the most wonderful things I've been a part of in the last 2 years are our varsity sports banquets. They're put on for students. All of the speakers are students. The coaches don't stand up and give another tired speech. The athletes volunteer. Our highlight speakers are always some of our student athletes. And it's just a wonderful event. I've run probably 10 different versions of this, so I know what good and bad is. This is by far the best. It's a great way to make our kids feel wonderful. The boosters, in like a month, the next one is going to be, they have a food truck show up, and there's trivia and all kinds of stuff. It's a wonderful, I know it's good when participation is through the roof. All right, student engagement. We have right now students who earn community service credit outside the school day, meeting with me, meeting with the yearbook committee, meeting with the photo teachers, taking pictures of our athletes. We have one student who is linked with Huddle, one of our platforms online, and does all the game film for a lot of our events. And it really is a wonderful way to take a non-athlete and bring them into the community of athletics. Another great example is in the last 2 years, we've really had quite a few live in-person performances of the national anthem. It seems like kind of a minor detail, but I got to tell you, it feels so wonderful to be able to announce, you know, Hastings Junior or FMS 8th grader and list a name after that and have them perform in front of parents, friends, family, athletes, outside community members. And then partnerships, right? We're running a couple of huge events. We've been, the Alumni Association and I have been trying to chip away, of course with the Booster Club's help, for the alumni softball game, which is coming up. That one is actually an old flyer. It's coming up in a couple of weeks. We're also running a Relay for Life event, which is only in small part of the athletic program. But I think the idea of partnerships is important. And remembering our past, right? We go back to Goal Alley. We dedicated our gym floor. really seasoned athletes, there's 10%. Those are making things every day after school. Okay, intramurals. I'm going to go relatively quickly through this, but we do run a few intramural programs that I think are really beneficial. They kind of fill a space that's important. They're typically coordinated by PE staff. They're games, right? It's a space for physical activity. They're typically before school. A lot of parents end up using this time for when they need to get out to work. You know, they'll send a student in, they're supervised, get a little extra physical activity before school. We also have something that we've built over time, which is now almost every single day of the school year, we have our fitness center open. It makes it so much nicer now that we have really a great dedicated space to it. But this 2-year project of the actual fitness center and its equipment is only really part of what I'd like to accomplish over the next 2 or 3 years. And lastly, and this is really a new program, it came from community interest and all that, we started running late night like open gyms for basketball. It gave a lot of students a place to go on a Friday night. It gave them a place to be safe, to be supervised, to be physically active. I have to be honest, all of my numbers are really pretty accurate. This roughly 20 students an event is probably the least accurate number. That's because we averaged in things like days right before spring breaks and the first event, which we must have done something wrong with advertising. We had like 4 people. Our number really is probably a lot closer to 30 or 35 students for those events. And that you can't really put a price on because while it is a relatively cheap program to run, you're reaching kids on like a Friday night that need a place to go and find something to do. And it's all grades. It really is open and supervised by many of our coaches. And so they're getting instruction and
Can I ask a quick question on
Sure.
that? What's the breakdown of boys to girls?
Mostly boys, but definitely both. We had
Is there a way to make it more friendly and appealing for girls to come to?
Sure, it's a brand new program, right? This is our 2nd year of doing it, and we're learning it something every single time we run it. We have one of our girls basketball coaches. Intentionally, I had one of our coaches from boys basketball and one from girls basketball. So hopefully help. For me, it's mostly about like the outreach, making sure people know it's even happening. Because a lot of times it's very difficult. I don't have a lot of time to spend with like promotion, and that really is a huge part of my job, but I get sucked into those scheduling things that I end up with. So I'm sure there are, and there'll be things that we work on over the next couple of years to kind of perfect it. Right.
Jesse, I'm also just going to say, just because we're at this point about your late nights and providing a place for our children to go, we just had a really terrific discussion about vaping, and it's very interesting because our policy 5440, one of the things in our policy is that we are to make an effort to provide positive alternatives to alcohol, tobacco, drugs, through the promotion of free special events, service projects, and extracurricular activities that will develop positive peer influence. So thank you. This is one of those perfect opportunities.
I think it's a nice one, and you'll see in a little bit, hopefully I have some other things that can help support that as well.
Great.
I know we're running low on time and there's still quite a bit to get to, but the instructional intramurals, right, this is what my approach, this is what I am building towards. It's been almost 2 years now, and I got to say, I still have a long way to go. But I think athletics, this department, should look more like this. You notice I entered a completely new slide into there, which is instructional intramurals. I think there's a real purpose and a real need for programs like this. We'll talk about them in just a second. So let's talk about these 2 areas of focus. This is the real-time 2018-19 participation for modified sports. You'll notice, please don't strain your eyes. It's not the point of this slide, right? Board members, you have all this information in front of you. What I want you to notice is kind of how severe this line is, right? It's high, it's low, it's high, it's low, right? So we have to try to think about how do we kind of address that. This is what I'm calling, and please don't, ideal participation. That's really, that idea, that number, is based on how many starting positions there are, what type of risk or safety concerns there are for the sport. Again, it doesn't matter what the actual number is. what I would like you to do is start to look at the differences between them, right? The red line, the actual participation is pretty high and low. In fact, in some places we don't have enough for what we need, all right? So how do we address some of these peaks? Because we can't address everything all at once, right? We have to be kind of thoughtful about how we approach every single element here. And the good news is we're already doing some of this. I've kind of highlighted a few sports in there for you. And if you look at the boys basketball peak, which is about 40 students this past year, well, I'm going to rely on this quite a bit because we solved this problem, all right? And now we're expanding this solution. So what does that look like? Well, the idea, and I wish I had a better, more catchy name for this, right? But really, it's what we should have been doing all along. And I'm including myself, of course, in that because I was the athletic director here for a number of years, right? We should support the modified programs the way that we need. And how do we do that? Well, in my opinion, this past season is a perfect example of how this can work. I've been working over quite a bit of time on when we should bring on an assistant coach, when our numbers have reached a point where they're either unsafe or, to be completely honest, even our instructional ability has just been decreased to a point where that program is bordering on ineffective. Okay? I'll give you 2 success stories here. Modified softball. They had 23 participants this past season. All right? Now, Joe Vaccaro, you probably all know Joe Vaccaro, even if you don't have any students in the middle school, high school yet. Joe Vaccaro was a varsity softball coach for, I think, close to 20 years. He's now our modified softball coach, so we're in really good shape already, right? But even Joe Vaccaro, a person who's been 20 years in softball, is going to have a difficult time when you give students bats, you give them projectiles, you send them out there and you try to create a safe opportunity for them to learn. Once we hit 23 students in that program, it took me about, now it will never happen this easy again, but it took me about 72 hours to find Dom Ciceri, another person who's coached varsity level athletics for decades, who is willing to put in the time and coach our 23 girls. Now, I'm not saying this happened because of that. We have a lot of really good modified softball players. But the last time I checked in, there were 6 games that our girls won by quite a few runs. Now, a better example to give here is this. I coached softball for a very long time. The last modified game I watched, I saw our modified team run a first and third play, which I struggled as a JV coach with 22 athletes to teach. They also had runners tagging up from third base, something that sometimes our varsity athletes forget to do. This is a success story about when we support those programs with the qualified, experienced coaches, what we can get out of them, right? So that number of 23, which is a very scary number for one person to work with, is a really comfortable, much more comfortable number when we have the support necessary. Same thing with boys tennis. Everyone loves Cherie McNulty. We had 33 boys come out for modified tennis. We don't have half of that in a normal year. We were able to hire an elementary physical education teacher, Mike Chappis. He showed up 2 days later, start working with the modified tennis team. I visited one of their practices just a few days later, and Mike would say this if he was standing here. He has no idea. Okay? But he loves kids, and he knows how to teach. And he's learning quicker than the boys are. And so they were able to run a practice. In the 20 minutes I stood there, it was efficient, it was productive, everybody was active, people were laughing and having fun. That's what modified should be. You guys have a much more extensive, the whole back half of one of your booklets is my whole kind of, I don't want to call it a proposal, but this whole idea of how we should support our modified programs in a way that accomplishes all that we want to accomplish. Okay?
You lost me a little bit on, so what's the support that at a certain level we had an assistant?
In the past we'd have one coach. So if we had 33 students for modified tennis boys tennis, we had already created a schedule where students were showing up every other day for practice. They would have competed in probably 5 matches instead of the 12 to 14 matches of the season. And so and then of course for the coach, they're trying to manage now 2 completely separate teams within a season, a 10 to 12 week season. This worked out perfectly for me. I have a really hard time finding qualified, experienced coaches in general. That's why I coached varsity field hockey for 3 weeks last year, right? Because we don't have 600 applicants reaching out to try to coach these sports. Decades ago, we had a lot of in-house teachers interested in coaching. This is not a Hastings issue. This is all across. There are just less people interested in coaching interscholastic athletics. There's a lot of certification demands, which I'm happy that they're there, but they're also a barrier for a lot of people. And so the difficulty here is actually being able to find qualified people at the last second. I really lucked out here. But our ship hasn't turned that quickly in the past. Right? I hope I answered, at least addressed it to a certain extent. Joe?
Yeah, so the tiered support though is
adding a second coach. Yeah.
Second coach.
If we reach the numbers on that, kind of the second to the right column, the goal would be to create a whole second team. So for modified tennis, we couldn't create a second team. We just didn't have enough time. It's a lot of work. But what we did do is we maxed out their game schedule, and we were able to have then, instead of splitting the students so they only showed up a couple of days a week, we ran fully functional, kind of chaotic practices with 33 students on 4 courts, which we never would have been able to do without the extra hub. And I'm going to kind of go quickly through here because I know I'm a little past the line here. Here are some pilots, this instructional intramurals that I'm starting under my current budget because I find that it's, I think it's going to solve a number of issues for us. I think it's important for our coaches. It's important for our athletes. It's also a great place for students who have trouble making the commitment to a sport, where they can still participate, they can learn the sport, and they can be competitive in it. But maybe they're participating in other things, or they just have too many issues in their schedule. Right now, we just started our volleyball offering yesterday. We had about 20 students in the gymnasium. They ranged from 5th through 12th grade. Our high schoolers were mentoring, working with, coaching some of our younger athletes. It was boys and it was girls. It was, I mean, it was such a huge, wide spectrum of people participating. It was wonderful. It's all led, this one in particular is led by our varsity coach, so we can guarantee that students are receiving really great instruction in their sport. We are also starting up a middle school running club in June, something that's come from a lot of discussion. World Cup soccer program last year ran unfunded, but had almost 60 participants last year. And it was all girls last year. Flag football, we're trying to start up this year. You'll notice some of these things are important for us from an athletic standpoint because we don't have youth sports in those areas, right? Rec basketball does a pretty darn good job with basketball. So there's less urgency in a sport like basketball to create something like this. But something like field hockey, lacrosse, football, right? A running club, these are places where people can participate, and it also helps us. I can't tell you how many meetings I've had with Aaron Podhurst building this together. It's a continuation of a lot of the programs that they run. Aaron's been wonderful. So I think this is a real extension of some of the things he's trying as well.
Who is Aaron?
Rec
Superintendent
center.
of
He's the head of the community center.
Great. Okay, cool. Thanks.
His office is so much quieter than mine. Always go to him. Always go to him. That's an example of a couple of the dates and times we'd like to do it. This is a future program I'd like to run, but we're not going to spend much time on it now. I think the natural extension of the certified athletic trainer that we currently have on staff, if we're talking about injury prevention, and if we're talking about lifetime skills, and if we're talking about a place to provide students with a really great experience, I think we've got to start talking about a certified strength and conditioning coach. I think the problem is people, when they hear that word, they think of some Division I football program, and that is not what I'm talking about. That is not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about someone who can coach coaches. I'm talking about someone who can work individually with students, so they don't have to pay for a New York Sports Club membership. Really to work with our whole department, both physical education, athletics, and everything. All right. I wanted to be honest. These are the biggest challenges that we face. Attracting qualified candidates. We advertised for 6 months for field hockey. I reached out to colleges. I reached out to professionals that run camps. I reached out to college coaches. I reached out to the Coaches Association in Section 1. I reached out to athletic directors who also had vacancies and said, please send me anyone who doesn't get your job. All right? I coached field hockey for 3 weeks. It was some of the most fun I had, but
I think Lou's a field hockey coach.
I know. I already asked all of our incoming teachers if they coach. The retention of coaches, right? The balance of the opportunity to participate in a physical activity and the achievement, the efficiency, the effectiveness of those programs. The retention of athletes. Honestly, we have athletes that leave Hastings. All schools are pretty much the same. But we have athletes that leave Hastings for a better sports experience somewhere else. Modified philosophy. We talked a little bit about that. How do we approach some of those peaks, right? How do we deal with what we know is one of the biggest, most pressing issues? And the commitment, right? It could, honestly, player commitment there is, but it probably could also say all of us, right? Player commitment is difficult because everyone does so much. We offer so much. So some of those are our biggest challenges. And honestly, I'll leave you on this, right? This is my plea, this is me begging, right? This is our overall school budget that we talk about. My little world is 1.5%. Okay, my little world. All right? They leave you guys. They come to me for like 3 hours every day. All right? We have buses, we have coaches, we have baseballs, we have everything, right?
Helmets.
The idea here being, right, that I know I'm coming from a place, but to me, places like intramurals, those are really cheap dollars. It's a way to reach so many students. It's a way to give them an opportunity. It's a way to build links between everything. We always talk about connecting our kids to their community, and for us, it's a school. Athletics is a great way to do that. The good thing in Hastings is we also have the theater, we also have our academic clubs or our outside groups. Athletics is only one of them. But I also think it's important, a lot of times for parents, for board members to see, a lot of times when we think about athletics, we think about this kind of budgetary monster, and this is me hoping that I can get my point across. It's not always that way. So if you have any questions, obviously, please let me know, but I'm happy to kind of, fill in anything that I may have left out here.
Jess.
We only have like 5 or 6 minutes,
Yeah.
so let's take some questions.
Okay, I have a question and a comment, and I'll start with, one of the good things in Hastings is that we have sports, and we have theater, and we have music, and art, and kids can do everything, and I think it's one of the most fantastic things for kids to grow up in Hastings. You did it, to be in this community. I think the fact that my kids did all of that is as good as it gets, really. And a lot of sports, 3-season sports people. What's your feeling about volunteer coaches?
Well, as we have quite a few right now, right? We have one on our baseball team. We have one of our security guards who's volunteered this winter and this spring for track and field. If you know anything about track and field, talk about commitment. Their meets are like 8 to 10 hours long.
But I mean, is that something that you...
Of course.
Okay, because I think that's something that we have to think about too, financially. I think it's a good, when you get a George Tino who's willing to help coach,
I don't think I've ever turned one of those down,
Yep.
no. Usually, if I can be frank, what usually scares people off is when I sit down with them and start to talk to them about what they have to do for their New York State coaching license.
Right.
And they say, I don't want to pay $100 for fingerprinting, and I don't want to pay $100 for
Right.
my workshops, and I don't want to pay for the DASA workshop, and I don't want to pay for
Right.
CPR, first aid, AED. And then this year alone, I've had probably at least 3 volunteers say, I'm sorry. For that, and there's not much
you can do.
we can do about that.
So I just want to thank you for this, and I think it's important for us because it's the kind of thing that comes and goes. We always say we're going to talk about it, but other things come up, and I think it can't be underestimated, the value of sports in the life of kids, and for kids who are lucky enough to find some kind of outlet. And it's not for every child. Right. But for kids who do, and I think what it makes me think about is how important we always think about, do we get rid of cutback and intramurals? And it's like that's really the place where you capture the most kids, and you give kids the opportunity to try things that they wouldn't, they're not going to go on to be on the JV or the varsity necessarily, but they're going to have all those benefits, especially in the middle school years when Lord knows they need it. And I think that the value towards mental health, towards overall wellness, the life lessons that kids learn when they play on a team, the self-esteem they have, I just think there's so much. Obviously, that's what I think, and that's the way we run rec basketball. But I just think it's so, it's invaluable, and I think that we need to find ways to support this and open our doors as much as we can to as many kids at as many levels. Even if after middle school they don't continue, there's still, still kids can do track. You can have as many kids as you want on the track team. Anyway, I just thank you for what you've done since you've come back, and I think you've done an incredible job, and that you have an incredible vision for where you'd like to see this go, and it's such an important arm of what we do, and it's such a great outlet for kids. That's the other thing, and that kids have sports to go to after school instead of hanging out and vaping, or they could maybe vape after they play sports, but I don't know. But I just think it's such a great outlet in every way for kids that,
I agree, obviously.
and that's why I think in middle school it allows kids who might feel awkward about sports, don't feel they're the most athletic, they can also participate, and it's open to everybody, and it's not just, you're not just playing CYO if you're a basketball player, So,
Jesse,
thank you.
I have a compliment and a question. And the compliment is really, it's to you, but it's to the entire PE staff. I'll never forget when my children started at Hillside, they came home loving gym. And I said, really? I used to hide in the bathroom during gym class. And they continue to love gym through their years here. And I think that's what helps set the stage. So you have 80% of middle school children participating in sports. It's terrific. And with my own children, you created a 3-season athlete in one and a football player where I never thought I'd find a football player. Okay, which actually is a natural segue to my next.
I didn't know that
question.
Janie liked to play football.
So we had a letter written to us that was talking about the safety ratings of our football helmets, and correct me if I'm wrong, but they said in our pile of helmets that I think 6 of them are rated 5-star under the Virginia Tech rating, and the others are 4-star, which raised the question, should we be, as a district, looking to replace and just offer the 5-star to everybody?
Yeah, that's obviously a complicated question, but not as complicated as I think we might feel. All of our football helmets are very safe. I would never put, I want this on record, right? I would never put any of our students in a helmet that I felt was unsafe for them to be in, right? Coach Grasso, who was just here a little while ago, he and I have started, since he began as our varsity football coach, really working on a comprehensive plan to update all of our equipment, like I do with all of our coaches. We did purchase some new helmets last year with the idea that we would roll out every single season some new helmets. Over the last couple of weeks, I've talked with a number of athletic directors, and some districts have done a wholesale switch. Those switches can cost tens of thousands of dollars. For us, within our budget, we've slotted a few replacements every year as they naturally age out, or we have all of our equipment, especially our football helmets, all of them reconditioned every single year. So what does that mean? Basically, making sure there's no imperfections, no breaks. If they can fix them, they fix them. If they can't, they reject them, and we replace them kind of on a rolling basis. Again, the 5-star versus 4-star is not, I think, actually one of our bigger areas that would actually lead quite a bit of positive impact. Could be one of the assistant coaches that I, Jesse Merchant, had to decide to cut out of my budget last year really impacted our ability. And again, it didn't make it an unsafe atmosphere. But by adding a qualified coach, where I honestly had to take one before, is going to lead to better, more individualized instruction for kids. It's going to provide better supervision on the sideline during a game. Would it be better to have the best money can buy? Sure. It's probably a $20,000 to $40,000 swing because we still have inventory that's perfectly functional. It's one of those things that we're in the scheme of things. There's a lot of money that probably could be spent in a lot of ways. That's certainly one of the places, but I think we have a pretty good plan for replacement for that.
Well, I appreciate the honesty of your answer, and why don't I say this, because I know we have a time constraint. Somebody who chooses a car based on the safety rating, why don't we discuss this again at the next meeting? And I would say rather than be having you reallocate money that's in your budget, at the end of the year, sometimes we do have some funds that we can use to make purchases and really assess whether this is something that we should do. Again, as a parent who had a kid play football, it's hard to say, don't invest in the best. It's a conversation with Maureen and all that. So I would just suggest maybe we address that in 2 weeks at the next board meeting. Does that sound good to everybody?
Well, I think better that we go to flag football and forget football.
One thing I wanted to bring up is that, a lot of times what I've seen on the board is that we have discussions, someone comes in, we have a discussion about this one thing, and we make a decision on that one thing, and then we wind up in the budget meetings, and there's things that we've already committed to, and we can't, kind of look at it from a broader viewpoint. So I just want to kind of state that I think this is something that we look at as far as like the entire picture of all the budget, $51 million of the budget. I do want to clarify a couple of things. You mentioned you've had discussions with people who are interested in volunteer coaching, and you kind of turned them away because we don't want to pay for their training, which
No, they didn't want to do the training.
Or they didn't want to do the training. But it seems to me that if we could get someone who wanted to be a volunteer, we just had to pay for their training, that we would take them up on that. Is there a reason that we haven't wanted to look into
honestly, I don't think that's a possibility. I don't think I've ever turned anyone away for, I think most of the time it's their decision to say this is probably 5 straight days worth of courses that I need to take, and that has a financial hit on my day job, basically, and also the cost of those events as well.
Is it the cost or the time? Because from the cost perspective, we should be able to cover that.
I mean, there might be an opportunity for the board, if that was something you wanted to explore, the board could possibly agree to allow, like under certain conditions, some of those volunteers, I guess, to we could reimburse them for the courses. I think that's like a new concept, but I think it could be something if there would be a benefit, but I guess it would be with the caveat that they would commit to doing it for the year.
Okay. I honestly didn't realize it was even a possibility, so that's certainly something I'll look at.
Talked about it, but then, but to your point too, then there may also be like the time.
Right, like for example, the DASA course is a 6-hour course that they'd have to take a day off from work for.
But it's something to keep in mind that if we could, maybe reimburse them.
I'm ashamed that I didn't ask the question before, because that might solve some problems.
And then if they quit during the middle of the year, they have to pay us some money back.
Right.
The way companies
I think we have to
pay
be
for
thoughtful about how we roll something like that out, but I'll talk to you tomorrow.
Well, right now we've been doing more of the CPR and like provide that when
Right.
have kind of amped that up a bit even for our volunteers, like to make that available. So maybe kind of similar with the other things.
So I think we probably have maybe like 45 minutes more worth of questions we would want to ask that I think we're not going to be able to get a chance to. But I will say that you could be a management consultant or sales. You had a good vision. You communicated effectively. I love the diagrams, how you slipped a new slice into the pyramid. That was high-end professional graphics. So I
Don't get him a new job.
But what I really appreciated was that you really were communicating. I mean, we think about whole child development, we think about the academic, the emotional, the physical, and you're really situating the athletics inside of that, and I thought that was really great. As a next step, I think, and I don't know, maybe we could talk offline to figure out how to do this, but there was a little sliver and then a big pie. And if that sliver were a little bit different,
right behind
reallocated, what is that prioritized set of things? How would you start to prioritize those things? Because on some level, it'd be great to, let's say, resource 20 things on that list, but if you could only do 3, what would they be and why? Just to get a little bit more prioritized list down. And I think that would be an interesting thing for the board to discuss. So for example, Jeremy threw one small thing out here, the helmets is another thing. You threw out a coach as another option, and maybe other coaches. You said it's not that much money, for example, to get more structure around the intramurals, but what does that actually look like, and what is the money involved? Just getting some more specifics, I think, would be a great next step for the board if everyone thinks that's a good place to go.
Okay. Well, the only thing I'll add, thank you for doing this. I think it's great. I think you did a great job. I think this sets the stage for all of our discussions in the 1920 academic year. When you come back with priorities, we know exactly what the lens is. We've got a great history, so this is one of the best kind of in my time doing this. This is a great piece of work, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jesse. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
That's great. Okay.
They know they can.
If anyone was only here to hear Jesse and wants to take on, feel free. Okay, business items. Does anyone have any questions on business items 1 through 9? I know inside of there, I see that architectural report is listed in 2 different spots here, or at least maybe it got moved. It was.
I don't, Janine had asked me earlier if there was going to be a report. There was not going to be one. It's just that we are agreeing to their proposals, which will allow, and they're working on the actual physical contract. So that's just agreeing to the updated proposals.
And so can you really briefly, I know at one point we were having a conversation, all told, fees were in the like 1.1 to 1.2 range?
This, I think,
This looks like a
is
little
about,
bit
I
less.
think together it's about $25,000 or so less. But what I think is also great is that both of the architects, they had a meeting and talked about working together, and I think they've definitely, that was something that Ray was open to because he felt as though that would help him focus his energy on the design aspects of it, and it just ended up that it was a little bit less costly as well. So I think it's good, and they're actually already have been speaking, and they're actually having a meeting amongst themselves tomorrow to kind of plan out their work for the next month. And they also felt the benefit of H2M's knowledge of the buildings and having done a lot of work here will help move the work forward just in a much smoother way, and then also help with the contacts at the state ed department. So
Great end result.
yeah, it actually, they were
Maureen,
really happy about it.
And thank you, Maureen, for your work in facilitating that. It's a great outcome.
Yeah, no, it actually, thank you, and I appreciate, your work in coming, Manisha and Lisa, to the meetings, and I do think as much as we're concerned, it delayed us a bit, I do think now everything, it really is going to be perfect.
Good.
And I think it'll be more timely because we have 2 architects working on our behalf.
Okay, so as we look at 1 through 9, does anyone have any questions before we vote on business items 1 through 9? Do we have a motion to pass business items 1 through 9, 4A?
So moved.
And a second?
Lauren,
Okay.
I'll second.
All in favor? Placement for services, CSE and CPSE. Do I have a motion to approve placements in 4B?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? addendum again was, oh, this is the PA system? This wasn't in the, now why wasn't it in the business items?
Because we just got the quote today and we
just
added
got
it.
it, okay.
So this was what we discussed to help kind of pull that out of the scope of work. And I think we identified it as an emergency kind of
Nice.
repair. So this quote reflects the actual scope of work we had used in terms of developing the
The
budget.
original number, it was like 300,000 or
Well,
400,000?
there was a much higher number, which would be kind of a gut overhaul, like it depended
Right.
upon how we designed the system. So we started off with something in like the $400,000 to $500,000 range, and then this was an alternative way to kind of go about it, and then also allow if we wanted to change some other aspects down the road of the system. But this is what was included in the bond scope.
Okay, so can I have a motion to approve the PA system proposal? And a second?
Second.
All in favor? We did personnel appointments, approval of minutes.
One thing, the Finance Committee from the last time, I know, Tim, you had said you were going to write up minutes. I haven't received them. I did write up the portion relating to staff children. I don't know if that has made its way.
I thought we did approve that wasn't it on the list?
Well, we talked about it, but we didn't have
Meeting, but we
minutes.
didn't have the minutes, that was all.
Yeah, and it wasn't approved or anything. We were directing it to the policy committee.
That's right.
So then I think we had a letter that asked a question, so since Tim was unavailable,
Maureen,
I drafted up, I'm sorry, Tim, I'm talking. So I drafted up the minutes relating to the staff children. I don't know that Janine has gotten to append them to the minutes from 2 weeks ago. And Tim, if you could finish up the rest of that, then we can have the entire minutes appended to the meeting 2 weeks ago.
Let's table this then, and we can pick it up
Sure.
in 2 weeks.
Okay,
Perfect.
sorry, all right. So I'll just write I'll write to Janine to make sure she attaches.
And I'll make sure she gets it. I don't know if she has it yet.
Was the suggestion there to wait on the approval of these minutes because it's not reflected? Is that what it is?
Yeah, that the minutes from the committee meeting that we discussed are not
Next time.
appended.
Okay. So why don't we table the approval of those minutes? Just do a time check here. Okay, Jody when do you say we need to be?
We have to be in the gym by 9,
Okay,
or they won't let you in.
okay.
They might let us, but I don't think we should take a chance.
Knock hard enough, they might let me.
It's not just Janine, it's a lot of other people who...
Okay, so we have 3 things here. Let's just figure out what we need to talk about now. So we've got the diversity committee minutes, and what I'm looking at is what has time sensitive.
One of my
skate park?
one of my advocacy issues has a time sensitivity.
So let's do that. Let's do the advocacy.
So let
It's
me
very
just go
simple.
through- let me just ask, before we go there, the skate park,
Yeah.
what's the time sensitivity?
Well, I think the village is trying to finalize their plans for they've secured funding in their budget, so I think they're looking for now that the area's been identified and we've found out the questions that were the open questions in terms of insurance and liability.
What's the area that they landed on?
It is on, there's a picture in the minutes, Jody, but when you're coming up to the driveway it's right opposite the baseball field on the lower,
That's
on the
what I
left.
thought it was, yeah.
So, and they did,
Yeah, no,
they did create a
fine.
picture. I think the one thing that even moving forward with it, it would still allow, like, that would not mean that, like, you're kind of agreeing to, they can come in and put whatever. They would still have to, the space, the actual size of it, I guess, would be approved at a later time. But just the idea that that would be a space we would enter into an intermunicipal agreement with them for the lease of that space, similar to like how Reynolds was entered into for the Reynolds Park. So it would be a similar agreement. And that's what it would require. So it's just a matter of kind of giving them the okay that we're in favor of doing that, or in favor of allowing them to use the space.
Giving them the okay to use the
The
space.
land, yes.
And at what cost to us?
None.
They'll draft the agreement, and
Correct.
we'll have an agreement to vote on at the next or...
So this is just giving them the go-ahead to put the agreement together?
I think they just wanted to make sure, I think there was some open, in some of our discussions, I think people were interested to kind of understand where it was
Yeah.
going to be located, the amount of space required, and then also the concern around the liability.
And
So once
who
we
has
kind of
looked
got
at the
that-
liability issue for us?
The insurance company, and also speaking with, and I also in speaking to the village about how we would be covered and how that would be incorporated into the intermunicipal agreement, similar to and the attorney, I'm trying to think, it was three pieces, but it was like, because when you speak to the attorney, they're like, it really will go back through your insurance coverage.
So Maureen, I know we've talked about this, and I don't want to beleaguer this, but I just want to review it one last time.
Sure.
The skate park is a village
Activity.
thing. It's not a school thing.
Right.
So when we talk about the liability, obviously. And it was determined that there was no other place in the village that there could be a skate park. I just think that we have limited space here and a lot of need. That's my only concern. I mean, I want there to be a skate park, but did they say that there
Well, I
was
mean,
no other
that's-
place in the village where we could have a skate park?
I mean, I guess, yes. I mean, I want, yes, that is why they approached us, because I
Maybe
think
Tim,
whatever.
you might be more.
I mean, I'm not any more versed in terms of what research they've done in terms of other spaces, but what I would say is that it's currently just woods.
It's currently.
Just woods.
Yeah, we wouldn't be
They're
developing.
currently
it.
just woods, and I think it's fascinating and really quite fortunate for us that we have this intermunicipal agreement framework already with Reynolds, which I certainly hadn't thought of when we thought about this before. So we know we have the liability protection there because kids are swinging on swings and, doing whatever they do, do it with Reynolds with your... What's that?
Skate parks.
In a skate park, it's a higher liability, but the intermunicipal agreement exists.
The footprints there, yeah.
But the most important thing is in the space, it's empty woods right now, not used. So, I mean, I think the only question I would have to dovetail yours is the ability to claim it back as school space to the extent that we need it to build out. Because, at least from that PDF image, it's a wood park as opposed to some other places that do concrete. A wood park can be torn down in a matter of 48 hours.
Yeah.
So if we maintain some control over it in terms of like a lease arrangement or a no-fee lease arrangement, but it has a sunset, it's got to be renewed.
I like that.
That's great.
I'm sure maybe you could do that.
I like
Put
that
up a
idea.
20-year lease, I mean, like a useful life, which would be the useful life for them prior to them needing to like invest additional.
20 years is a long time.
20 years is a
but-
long
No, I'm just
Yeah.
using like I would think that I mean, quite frankly, I don't know exactly what's going to happen, but I don't think for the next 10 years we'll be doing anything over there at the very least, but, we'll see.
But I think
You never
I
know.
don't think, I mean,
You
that's
never
fine.
know.
Time.
So why don't we get
Sure.
a draft agreement
Yep,
together, and then
okay.
we can look at that, and then we can take.
So I can kind of say that if the draft
Yes.
agreement,
Yes.
Yeah,
I think
and you could just-
liability and the claim back thing are the two big things in my mind.
Yeah, and there may be some questions, suggestions as to what to do with the agreement, the draft agreement, right? So they shouldn't just think, hey, I sent an agreement, so just stamp it, done. But yeah, let's keep going.
So let me just check in with Nanisha and Lisa. Diversity Committee is okay to do the minutes and discuss that at the next meeting?
Yeah,
Absolutely, yeah.
So then advocacy, Lisa, do you?
Yeah, so there are two issues. I'll just discuss the one with urgency. And the reason there's an urgency is New York's legislative session is only half of the year. It ends on June 30th, so right now is the time when things are happening. Finally, we have an opt-out bill in both the Senate and the Assembly. It's not encouraging opt-outs, but what it is, and just to put it in background, both Betty Rosa, who is the Chancellor of the Board of Regents, and Mary Ellen Elia, who is the Commissioner of the State Education Department, both have acknowledged that you have the right to opt out. So this is a codification of that. I sent it to you, so I'm assuming that you've all read it and are familiar with it. It really just, it gives protection to schools. Because if you recall last year, I asked us to write, because they were proposing moving around our Title I funds or taking away our Title I funds if we had more than 5% of our kids opt out. That's terrible. And we fought that and we won. Our advocacy helped towards that. So this bill is, there's nothing earth-shattering in it. It acknowledges the parents' right to opt their children out of high-stakes testing, so it's not your math test that you're getting on Wednesday. It's high-stakes testing. It forbids a school. Now, we don't have these problems here, and I thank you, Charlie, that you have been supportive of opt-outs, or you haven't done things that other superintendents have done, including suspending children, offering bonus cards to kids who take the test. It forbids all of that. Anyway, and it protects the parents' right to opt out. It protects the school from being punished if you have greater than 5% of your students not taking the test. What I would suggest that we do is write a letter, and I'm happy to write it, and we write it to the sponsor at the Assembly and the sponsor in the Senate, saying that our Board of Education supports this, and we appreciate the codification, and that we appreciate the protection of the schools. Now, what I'd like to do is send, I prefer not to wait another 2 weeks. What I would suggest is I draft it. We're not going to have a quorum. If maybe 1 or 2 people want to be, on my team, and we send it back and forth, if everybody's happy with that, then we could do that. If everybody agrees that this is legislation that we'd like to see happen.
The question for me is, because you're a little bit closer to a lot of the advocacy stuff, and I'm just trying to think about what are the potential negative impacts of this law going in place?
I've been thinking the same thing, and I've been asking my colleagues, and we're not coming up with any. I like that it gives protection to the school, because we're going to have more than 5% opt-outs for a good long time, I think, because to bring it down that low, and it affords us protection. The state can't mess around with you. Yeah. So that's a big thing, and I do appreciate the acknowledgement that some parents, believe, for whatever reasons, the stress of their child or the political nature of some of this, that they don't want their child participating, and I
it doesn't take
that.
a lot of kids to get to 5% when you're talking
in
about
a school district this size.
Right.
Oh, and then bring it down to the grade level.
Right.
Then you're really having a tough time.
I mean, I fully support a family's choice to opt out their students from high-stakes testing, particularly in the lower elementary grades. But I haven't had a chance to really absorb the law that's written, and I feel like it's really rushed to make a commitment as a board to write a letter tonight. And very likely, I will say yes as a board member that I'd like to support us writing a letter. But I do feel like it's a little rushed, and I do need more time. We only received it yesterday afternoon, and I honestly haven't had a chance to. I saw your plea for it, but I didn't really read the law that's being proposed, the bill that's being proposed. So if you feel comfortable drafting something in the meantime, that would be fine with me, but I can't say tonight that I want to give a go-ahead.
Why don't we do this? Because there is I think waiting till the next meeting, I think we've lost our chance. So why don't we see if we're in agreement, okay? And if we are, move forward. I'll get the letters drafted in the next couple of days. That gives you time to read it. If you have concerns, you can let us know. How's that?
I'd like to propose that we have, that you write up letters, but we give everybody enough time to read through everything so that we could decide, say, a week from now, that we could be decided, if people are okay with signing on to it, then we don't have to first wait for a week for people to be okay. If it takes a week to go through everything, and then the letter's ready, and then we could just communicate, and when everybody's okay, we can send it.
So we'll look for the goal if everybody's okay. Today's Tuesday of, say, sending it out Monday or Tuesday of next week, and that gives everybody time to look at it and review and absorb.
Monday's Memorial Day.
Okay, so Tuesday.
Problem with waiting 2 weeks? Because June 30th is the end of...
Yeah, but things get done. By the time you're there, you're you're dotting the I's and crossing the T's. So now is the time to show the support.
Yeah,
that's
it should go in.
I just, in addition to...
It's a one-page law.
Yeah, so in addition to Lauren's point, I'd like to know where our incoming superintendent stands on this issue, who's obviously versed in the law and the issues as well, and I would like to hear her full-throated...
I'll happily send it to her.
Yes, I'd like to hear her full-throated endorsement, and that this is something she'd like to see happen. I think that's...
You want to communicate with her about it?
At least
I'll do it. I'll send it to her. I'm going to guess she's going to be in full support because it just gives us protection that we need.
Well, absolutely.
I will tell you, I have a colleague whose school in Long Island is now considered a CSI school because they had too many opt-outs, which is just a crime.
Listen, the point is just, I think, Valerie should be included.
I think it's a good suggestion.
Everybody should feel
So just so I know, so the plan is, I'm going to draft letters, get them to everybody, send to Valerie.
The one other question I have is, so this bill...
But wait, let me just finish. And if everybody's cool, then they'll be sent out Tuesday-ish, as long as everybody's cool.
I think that's fine. Where does this bill stand in terms of its ability to pass in the Senate?
I don't know. I know it's in both houses, and it's getting some traction. Beyond that, I wish I knew.
So I think we have a good game plan, so thanks for bringing that.
Okay.
Second public comment, anyone?
Can I just ask a question just about the diversity, because we had spoken about just doing the training, and then one thing I just wanted, because I think we do have something for our own, like, our extended staff members, but
Right.
only because of timing and funding.
Okay.
Do you think that there's something about doing a community-wide training? Is that something you want me to try to do something between? Only because I think I read something about also.
The most time-sensitive issues were how are we going to incorporate the implicit bias training into the new staff that's being
Okay.
hired, since I know like Hillside had something
Yes.
like 10 positions. And then also the conversation of our extended staff, so meaning our custodians,
Yes.
our security guards.
Cafeteria workers.
Cafeteria
Yeah.
workers, their training in the
Coaches,
implicit.
coaches, yeah.
Assistant coaches.
Yeah.
That I think is the most
Okay.
time sensitive. I think we're still in the planning phase with how we want to roll it
Okay.
out to the larger
Gotcha.
community. But I think the most time sensitive are those
Because I'm
two
going to
aspects.
try to aim for those days at the end of June when we have those couple days. So I
Perfect.
just wanted to make sure,
Yeah.
like, we have
Thanks,
kind of
Maureen.
something in place for
Yeah.
September, but I wanted just to let, as, you know, before the
Right.
next
Yeah,
meeting, because then this way I can try to secure trainers.
Yeah,
and I-
that'd be great.
And then
Thank you for-
also.
thank you for
remembering that. Yeah, no, I just, when I saw it, I meant,
We
I wanted to
wanted
ask you
see if
about
we could
that.
get Diane Goodman again.
Oh, okay.
Before everyone leaves, we need a motion to close the meeting?
Oh, sorry.
So moved.
Sorry.
No, that's
Okay.
okay. All right, I think we have to hustle our way
Okay,
over.
second?